I'm Reg Presley, and welcome to another UFO show. I'm in an area here near Cheesefoot Head, which is noted for its scenic beauty, but it's also now noted for other things, strange things, that have happened in this area. It is where Colin Andrews saw his first crop formation in 1983, and it's off of the main A272, which leads through from here to Winchester. Colin saw a quintuplet set of circles in this field. Also, around 7 years later, Brian Tubbs, who is an engineer who mends combined harvesters, saw a flock of geese fly around a huge crop circle just over the rise where we are now standing. But the main story that I'd like to tell you is the one that happened with Joyce Bowles and Ted Pratt. Again, just off of the A272. They were driving along, and also they were having a love affair. They pulled off of the A272 when they saw an orange glowing light over a field. Their story was that they got beamed somehow on board and were shown a lot of things that they really didn't want to speak about, or they were told not to speak about. But one thing they did say when they discovered that Colin had seen crop formations here was that the aliens told them that this was their field. Why would this be so? The strange thing is, if you don't believe their story, it seems incredible to think that they ruined 2 marriages to bring this to people's knowledge. And when the event was over, they were going round a roundabout in Southampton, 15 miles away, with no knowledge of what ever happened in between until later times. Just recently, I went to a UFO conference in Düsseldorf, and one of the gentlemen speakers there showed this photograph, an orange elliptical shape in the sky. For 14 years, he had done his own research and only telling close friends of what he saw. And also he was able to get some movie pictures of the whole events. But frightened that people would think that he was out of his mind or that he was just having everybody on, for 14 years he kept it a secret until his friends said, you must show the world. However, while I was in Düsseldorf at the UFO conference, many things were spoken about, and one thing very near to me now was the Roswell footage. The government seems to have hidden this, and I'm not talking about our government at the moment, I'm talking about the American government, or some body within the government has kept it quiet. But just recently, some film footage leaked out. This film footage shows what is known, or what they say to be, an alien. And if you're not sure yourself, even now, listen to what the cameraman has to say.
When we got to Roswell, we were transported by road to the site. When we arrived, the site had already been cordoned off. From the start, it was plain to see this was no Russian spy plane. It was a large disc flying saucer on its back with heat still radiating from the ground around it. The commander on site handed over to the SAC medical team, who were still waiting for Kenny to arrive. However, nothing had been done as everyone was just waiting for orders. It was decided to wait until the heat subsided before moving in, as fire was a significant risk. This was made all the worse by the screams of the freak creatures that were lying by the vehicle. What in God's name they were, no one could tell. But one thing's for sure. They were circus freaks, creatures with no business here. Each had hold of a box which they kept hold of in both arms, close to their chests. They just lay there crying, holding these boxes. Once my tent had been set up, I started filming immediately. First the vehicle, then the site and debris. At around 0600, it was deemed safe to move in. Again, the freaks were still crying, and when approached, screamed even louder. They were protective of their boxes, but we managed to get one loose with a firm strike at the head of a freak with the butt of a rifle. The 3 freaks were dragged away and secured with rope and tape. The other one was already dead. The medical team were reluctant at first to go near these freaks, but as some were injured, they had no choice. Once the creatures were collected, the priority was to collect all debris that could be removed easily, as there was still a risk of fire. This debris seemed to come from exterior struts that were supporting a very small disc on the underside of the craft, which must have snapped off when the disc flipped over. The debris was taken to tent stations for logging, then loaded onto trucks. After 3 days, a full team from Washington came down, and the decision was taken to move the craft. Inside it, the atmosphere was very heavy. It was impossible to stay longer than a few seconds without feeling sick. Therefore, it was decided to analyze it back at base. So it was loaded onto a flat top and taken to Wright-Patterson, which is where I joined it. I stayed at Wright-Patterson for a further 3 weeks, working on the debris. I was then told to report to Fort Worth for the filming of an autopsy. Normally, I'd not have a problem with this, but it was discovered that the freaks may be a medical threat. Therefore, I was required to wear the same protective suits as the doctors. It was impossible to handle the camera properly. Loading and focusing was very difficult. In fact, against orders, I removed my suit during the filming. The first 2 autopsies took place in July 1947. After filming, I had several hundred reels. I separated problem reels, which required special attention in processing. These I would do later. The first batch was sent through to Washington, and I processed the remainder a few days later. Once the remaining reels had been processed, I contacted Washington to arrange collection of the final batch. Incredibly, they never came to collect or arrange transportation for them. I called many times, then just gave up. The footage has remained with me ever since. In May of 1949, I was asked to film the 3rd autopsy.
I spoke to Bob Shell, who has investigated the actual film itself, and he at the moment is 95% sure that the film footage is for real. He needs one more piece of film footage to check, and then he'll be, he says, 100%. He needs 50 frames of the footage so that they can do a measurement, and also 1 frame of the alien attached to that they can drill a small hole and burn the piece of film so that they can tell exactly what it was made of. And by that means they will know for sure that it was filmed in 1947. If that is the case, there is no way that they could mimic this body in 1947. They did not have the material to make it. So you may think that it's probably a freak. Well, I can assure you I've seen another piece of film footage, not shown on the Roswell footage, of another alien, complete with no damage, which says to me that there would have had to have been 2 freaks. Doctors are saying that to get 1 freak that way with 6 fingers is a zillion to 1. There's not enough people on our planet for that to happen, and to have 2. But added to this, at Düsseldorf, I have now seen film footage, moving film footage of the crashed disc in a hangar in America, with people actually walking around it. It's approximately 30 feet in diameter. It'll be interesting to find out who let that film footage out. Could it be that the American government are now wanting us to know a little more about what is happening or what has happened? We shall see, probably in our next UFO show.